I had, I don't know, $1 million or $2 million in properties growing at 10% or 5% or whatever the appreciation is, or you could have $4 million of property growing at this much based on what equity you have. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Would you rather have 2 million growing at 10% or 4 million growing at 10%? It's the, you already have the money there. And so I was like, so what do I do? He's like, well, you can sell or cash out refi. And I was like, he's like, but I would sell them. I'm like, whatever you would do, do it. And he's like, really? And I was like, yep, here's the keys to the homes. Good luck. And he was like, right, like, really? And I was like, yeah.
I don't ever want to like push someone to do something they're not comfortable with, but I was just really impressed that it's like, look, I get it. Let's do it. And I felt like, whoa, I want to make sure this is good for you.
Yeah,
I don't want
like,
you
are
to
you sure?
Yeah, you're just like all in. Let's go.
Go, sell them all. Done it.
And I'm like, well, you want to talk about more or anything?
Well,
so
that's like today. Literally,
yeah, that's right.
Okay, we're gonna talk about a deal right now. Hey everybody, this is Sam Taggart and Jason Harris with Harris Investment Groups, and we've been partners on a bunch of stuff. And so you've heard his podcast, maybe on Bigger Pockets, maybe one of the podcasts that we've done in the past. He spoke at Door to Door Con many years, and he's been one of our platinum vendors every year. So anybody that's interested in real estate investments, syndications, big commercial or multifamily projects, and maybe you got $100,000 or $500,000 or $1 million, you're like, hey, I want to put somewhere and do something with it. It's a really easy turnkey way to get in on real good real estate deals. And I wouldn't say that unless I've personally done real estate with Jason. So hit up Harris Investment Groups. This isn't me just trying to pitch anything other than the fact that Jason has literally changed my life, and we're going to tell you that story on this podcast. And I could not be more eternally grateful for this man. He's made me millions of dollars and will continue to make millions of dollars over the years. So
thanks, Sam. Appreciate that.
Pleasure having you on the show, man.
Absolutely.
So can I give the preface to this?
Please.
Okay, so he does a podcast. What was that? It was in my basement back in Lehigh. What?
Yeah.
4 years ago?
4 years ago, maybe.
4 years ago. Jason's like, hey, I was like, dude, you're in real estate? You're on Bigger Pockets? Can I meet you? And I don't know. He's kind of in a circle, and I sit down with him, and I had at the time I had 2 fourplexes, a 3plex, a duplex, and I said, Jason, you're smarter than me, and this is a principle. This is what I'm saying. If you're listening to this is a very important principle to pay attention to. Hey, Jason, you're smarter than me. I don't really know what I'm doing. I mean, my dad was in real estate. I just heard you're supposed to buy real estate, and I did that. Look at my portfolio, and what would you do? Do you remember that conversation?
I do. Yeah.
And what happened? What'd you say? Like, what was the analysis?
So I used to do a portfolio analysis breakdown just to assess how strong your returns are. A lot of people don't realize over time there's a lot of built up equity inside their property, and all they're really seeing is their cash flow distribution that's hopefully building up over time. But really, that number divided by a much greater amount of equity you have in the property is actually a declining number. And people don't realize that. In the state of Utah, if you look over the last 5 to 7 years, we've had massive appreciation take place. And so really what I wanted to help you with is just to see you're doing really well, but could you be doing better? And what's important to you? Is it purely just income? Because maybe if that is, that keeping what you're doing is working fine. But if you're looking to grow your wealth and maximize your return and get some tax benefits along the way, there is a better way. And I don't want to just tell you that. I want to prove it to you. And I'm going to show you through the numbers what you've been doing, what you've received in a return, but what you could do and which one you'd prefer. And I think that's kind of how the conversation went.
Yeah, and so Jason was a financial planner for how long?
7 years, Edward Jones.
And then he decided, if I have money, I want to put it into real estate, not just annuities and life insurance and stuff like that, right?
Ironically, I bought real estate before I was a financial advisor.
Oh, really?
And wanted to do real estate as a career, but I didn't want to be a real estate agent. I wanted to be an investor.
Yeah.
But how do you invest if you don't have much money? So it was more financial advisor by day, real estate investor by night, until I know how I can be a more meaningful real estate syndicator, investor, and such. And so real estate's always been what I love and I'm passionate about. But I understand the other assets and diversification and the like. But yeah.
Love that. So he sits down and he goes, you could have, let's say, I had, I don't know, $1 million or $2 million in properties growing at 10% or 5% or whatever the appreciation is, or you could have $4 million of property growing at this much based on what equity you have. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. Would you rather have 2 million growing at 10% or 4 million growing at 10%? It's the, you already have the money there. And so I was like, so what do? He's like, well, you can sell or cash out refi. And I was like, he's like, but I would sell them. I'm like, whatever you would do it. And he's like, really? And I was like, yep, here's the keys to the homes. Good luck. And he was like, right, like, really? And I was like, yeah. And you were kind of like, on your up, right? Like trying to get your foot in the door. And you'd only, had at that time, how many doors?
This was after Bigger Pockets, so I still had probably a small amount of hundreds of units.
Yeah.
But certainly was getting into doing bigger type properties, bigger being $5 to $10 million types, where most of my past was always duplexes, fourplexes, maybe an 8 or 12plex here and there. And so, I was just at the point now of doing some bigger deals and was excited about it because I'd seen what we were doing and actually had done a lot of volume, but it was always smaller type deals. But again, the appreciation in those, because I had amassed a good amount in the portfolio, was strong, that I had a lot of equity built up that I was ready to roll into something more meaningful. Yeah. And that was, about the time that you and I were talking about doing something. And I think what I was impressed with is I don't ever want to push someone to do something they're not comfortable with, but I was just really impressed that it's like, look, I get it. Let's do it. And I felt like, whoa, I want to make sure this is good for you. I don't want you
to just,
sure? Yeah, you're just like all in. Let's go.
Sell them all. Done it.
And I'm like, well, you want to talk about more or anything? So
that's like today. Today. Literally,
that's right.
Okay, we're going to talk about a deal right now. So if you're listening to this, guys, I'm telling you, I'm not trying to boast. I'm trying to toot Jason's horn. There's two good solutions here. One, it's the richest man of Babylon. Give your money to the brick maker. Don't, if he knows how to make bricks, then don't give your money to the brick maker because he makes bricks. And give your money to the guy that knows what to do with the money. And you're a sales guy, right? I'm a door-to-door, solar, alarm, trainer. I know money, but I'm also there's smarter people than me. So give your money to the people that are smarter. And I'm going to come up with a couple principles that I follow when investing. And he checked some of these boxes. And so I was like, all right, done. It didn't, there was no question. And then here's the other problem. People with investments always say, one day I want to get into real estate. When I have XYZ, when I make 500 grand, then I can start into real estate. You guys realize, Jason said, he's like, I started doing a lot of volume, but he was doing onesie twosies, a little duplex here, a little house there, and he built this portfolio. Now he's doing bigger commercial deals. But how many years had you been doing? I mean, you were in
since 2010.
2010, and he's over here I did real estate on the side while doing Edward Jones, taking that little money that
just
I was
making. You were even really, but maybe I was a little more active in it.
Yeah, and it wasn't like you were making stupid amounts of money. Some of these dudes that are selling summer sales or doing the door-to-door thing, it's they're making way more than you were making as a financial planner.
Absolutely.
And they're like, well, I don't have enough money yet. I'm like, well, if he was able to do it, I promise you guys, anybody can. So let's keep going with the story. So I sell off my 2 fourplexes, and I subdivided them into single townhomes. And I think total in, I probably put in about 300 grand. So I bought 2 fourplexes, each 150,000 each, probably 4 years prior. And then, so over 4 years, that 300 grand had turned into about $1 million. And so I had $1 million of equity in these assets. And so I took that $1 million, and he's like, I have this apartment that I'm buying. Do you want to partner in on this? And so we went in and partnered on a 56plex. So principle number 1 that I want to teach is, 1, find somebody that's willing to put their money with you. So I'm like, okay, we're doing this. How much money are you putting in? He's like, I'll put X in. You put your $1 million in, and then let's do it. So if he's willing to put his own skin in the line, then this isn't a bad deal. Somebody that's smart is not going to be like, just to earn your business, I'm going to put in X amount of dollars.
Right.
So, you know what I mean?
And it was a meaningful amount. I mean, you put in quite a bit more, but I put $500,000 in, so I'm obviously convinced it's a good deal.
Yeah, you're not going to be I hope it does, just to get his, but
most GPs would do 5% of the overall raise, right? I was 35% of the total amount bringing to the table, so obviously the upside was strong enough for me to be, Sam, this is a good deal. We should do it. Here's why I believe it is. What do you think?
And we did it. So we buy it. It was what, 7.5 or something like that.
Yep,
and then we put a couple $100,000 into renovation. So total in, we're 8.2 mil. And this was about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And we gutted it. Like, what did we do to it? Like, what was your philosophy on, like, why buy this 56plex and what's the strategy here?
First off, it's in a good area, but it was distressed. I mean, it was an ugly, older property that had really had lots of deferred maintenance. And so we wanted to rebrand it, because if we're going to bring in a higher rent rate, a new tenant base is going to expect something better than what the offering was. And so to start off, we want to paint the exteriors, do a two-tone paint. Fresh paint goes a long way, and it's not an expensive cost. We put new doors on it, lights, numbers, so it just gave it a really nice look.
We changed the name.
Changed the name, which was also kind of cool.
So I grew up on a street in Park City that always meant something to me, White Pine Canyon Road. And so it used to be called Royal Gardens. We changed it to White Pines. So that was kind of a cool thing. Like, when you get to be in charge, like, you kind of get to do those cool things, which gave it a new brand, a new management's in town, new look, new name.
And why is that important? You know, there are lifelong tenants out there. There are people who as a kid lived there, and now 25, 30 years later, they're still renting, and they know the name and brands of these properties. You rebrand something, it changes the association of that property in the tenants, the lifelong tenant people's minds, and they see it as, whoa, White Pines. White Pines is a newly updated, renovated property that's now charging X amount in rent versus the really low rent rates that it used to demand and expect before.
There's a bunch of Nepali people. I walk in there and I'm like, wow, it smells like Indian food. Like, no.
Strong smells of
strong
food
smells
everywhere. We actually had to renovate the upstairs and downstairs at the same time, because if we had, you know, someone there cooking below the newly renovated unit, the smells were so strong that the smell of the new fresh paint now smelled like food. And so we actually had to be very strategic about how we renovated the property. And of course, where you're going from like $750 a month rent to $1,400 a month, which we were charging at the end of the renovation.
Guys, did you hear that?
That's a massive
to $1,450. We doubled the rents.
Massive increase. Now the market's been strong here, but more to that was just how nice of renovations we did. And we would only be willing to do those nice of renovations because Salt Lake's such a strong market right now. High demand, low supply. And so, started with the exterior, did some landscaping, gave it a new name. And with that, when a new tenant comes in, do they know how ugly the interior units are of the property? No. All they see is the new updated face
and
the one unit, right? And so it's like totally interesting in this scenario, because you have a bunch of Nepalese in this particular property intermixed with a new tenant who's willing to pay double of what they're paying. So we had to be very strategic of where the renovations took place, so we weren't intermixing it too much with the smells and the culture and just the change. And so we started with the northeast side, doing the most of the renovations there, and worked our way through it. But we were able to get that much higher rent rate because the new tenant looked at, wow, this is a nice looking property. It's older. I can tell it's in an older neighborhood, but there was a lot of gentrification happening, new townhomes being built across the street. So it was a good area, and we saw obviously strong demand. We would fill them. We started out having a model unit that we were showcasing, but we realized we don't even need the model unit because these things rent so quickly. So we ended up renting out the model unit and went ahead and just leased them as they were coming ready. But yeah, the interiors, we did some nice improvements for the washer and dryers. There had been a standalone facility where people had to haul their clothes in wintertime to go wash their clothes. No one wants to do that anymore. Maybe in the 70s when this was built, would someone expect maybe in apartments to do that? But nowadays, people expect to be able to wash their own clothes in their apartment, right? And so that was something we felt was a must. So we put the stackable washer and dryer. We added a dishwasher. We didn't have to do that, but I think based on the tenants, they all were willing to pay higher amounts by having those amenities in there. And so it was a nice finish, a nice product. And so we increased the net operating income, I think 200,000 from where we had bought it. We took it over about 300,000 a year of NOI and got it to about 500,000 upon selling, which is why we went from 7.5 to 11.5 sales price in just less than 2 years that we owned it.
So just this, January we closed?
January.
Months ago?
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
2 months ago, we sold it. And we renovated how many of the units?
26.
26. So 26 of the units. Guys, you can tell, guess how much involvement I had. I went there 3 times total. And guess who got a lot of the upside? I did. So here's the cool part. Remember how I said give your money to the people that do things with money? And what's cool is I literally went there 3 times. His team, so Jason has a phenomenal team. He's got a property management company. He's got the people that go find the deals. He's got people that go, subcontract out. He's the real estate agent. He knows the lenders. I didn't have to sit there and do the legal fees, all that stuff. I had to pay, but I'm just send me DocuSigns, and that's all I want to be involved. And because my time, I know how to go print money elsewhere. I know how to go get sales and do what I'm good at. And if I had to spend so much time writing up contracts, negotiating with lawyers, going with contractors and floor plans and picking out paint colors and all of that stuff that takes a lot of time and energy, and that's where people get scared of real estate, is I'm like, what if you could partner with somebody that's their strong suit, and you build a win-win scenario. So we sell that. Think about that. We put in $1 million, we buy it, let's say all in, we're 8.2, and 2 years later, you sell it for 11.5. And that 1 million of mine, or $500,000 of his, turned into 2.4 million, and same ROI here. And so then it's okay, now what? And this is why he said you can have either your 1 million of equity in these fourplexes be growing at the natural growth rate of what Utah is going to grow. You're going to collect your rents, and congratulations. Or watch what we can do with that same. So I look at those townhomes, and they've probably appreciated. I sold each one for $600,000. Today they're probably worth, I don't know, $750. I don't know.
850 even.
850 maybe.
Possibly.
Who knows?
Yeah.
But I'm great. I could have done that, and I could have just kept those for these 2 extra years, made the extra $800,000, probably $900,000.
So you sold them for 6? Is that what you're saying? Yeah, maybe not. 750, 800,000. Yeah.
So take 150 times 8. Yeah, call it an extra $1 million. So naturally, if I wouldn't have done anything, my $1 million would have turned into, maybe 1.8 in that range. And that's banking on appreciation. So we did what's called forced appreciation, turned that $1 million into 2.4, but then also got the tax benefit. So here's why this is the side of the story no one talks about. So let's get into why real estate for people that are high income earners to leverage for tax. And this is where it clicked, and I go, oh, done. We need to do this.
Well, this is meaningful. This is very meaningful. It's not part of the returns that most people talk about. About the 3 most common: cash flow, appreciation, principal reduction. But there is a 4th one, and for some people it can be very meaningful. So in 2017, 2018, Trump changed some of the tax policy benefits for real estate investors, those who own real property, where you can take an accelerated amount of depreciation loss known as bonus depreciation. So what we did on Royal Gardens, later White Pines, is we did something called a cost segregation study, which actually tells us how much depreciation we can take on the building. There's so much into this. I'm going to keep it high level.
We'll keep it high level.
Most people do something called straight line method depreciation, where they just depreciate it over 27.5 years equally over time, and then they use that phantom loss that's not real against the cash flow of the property, so they don't have to pay taxes on some of the money that they're making. Some people, however, I'd call it the more sophisticated investor, or maybe more wealthy high income earner, where taxes are a bigger burden for them, know how to use real estate in a way that can be a meaningful tax shelter strategy of growing their wealth. And in certain circumstances, that depreciation loss, that phantom loss that's not real, can be used against all income that you're making on your tax return, not just the passive income like cash flow that most people are using the depreciation for. And so when we talked about it, and we talked about how much you own in real estate and that you have direct access and some of the things you're doing, we talked about you getting the real estate professional status, or someone in the married filing jointly return. It only takes one or the other. And if they do that, it goes from those losses being limited to passive income to all income on the tax return. And so you were making good money, paying a pretty good amount in tax. And so we talked about, hey, this is what something my wife and I are doing, Sam. I think this could be applicable for you. Let's talk about it with your CPA. So we got all your advisors and team on board, discussed it, and found out you too could be taking that election. And so once you did that, we did the cost seg study. We found out about 30% of the building of what we paid, 7.5 million is what we paid. What would that be? 2.3 million roughly. In the first year, we could write off.
Did you guys hear that? $2.3 million write-off.
In the first year, against not passive income, Sam, all income on your tax return. And so all of a sudden, we had a significant loss that's not real, that we could use against all the income that you were making, that I was making. And I think you said it saved hundreds of thousands of dollars on taxes you otherwise would have had to give the IRS. But
I got money back in taxes, guys.
You got money back.
Yeah. Like I literally got a check back just recently from the IRS.
I have legally not paid taxes in 5 years.
And made a lot of money.
And I make millions of dollars a year. And not only that, I have tens of millions of dollars of depreciation loss that carries forward every year. My first $10 million of income, if I could make that much, would be tax-free because I already have a loss to offset it. So if I could make, let's say $5 million, I'm making this all up, $5 million, and I don't have to pay taxes on it, my lifestyle is not such where I'm spending that money.
Let's say he won the lottery. Most people lose half the money right away. He wins the lottery, he keeps 100% of it.
100% of it. And I love investing. Like, we've talked about my past. I didn't come from money. The financial principles were instilled in me at a very early age. I knew I didn't want to go the route my dad went. It didn't work out well for him. He's a great man. But him being an employee and got laid off so many times, I just wasn't going to do that. And so for me, I started with very little. And so I was a great investor. I saved 75% of everything I earned from an early age, which is why I was able to buy a fourplex when I was in college, rent out all 3 units, didn't pay a dime in rent because the tenants were paying my mortgage for me. But that allowed me to compound my money. So I was putting it to work in other assets. I was building something. And so, yeah, I was a millionaire in my 20s, but I was only making $40,000-$60,000 a year. That's making
props.
$400,000, $600,000 a year, and some of these guys don't have anything to show for it, other than a flashy car or some other things. But those are all depreciating assets that are liabilities in the future. And so, for me, I just took a different approach and allowed me to compound things a lot faster. And obviously, when my income started to grow, not paying a dime to the IRS, but getting to keep that money, hundreds of thousands of dollars or even millions of dollars, in my case, that I otherwise would be paying to the IRS, I now can put into more assets and continue to compound and grow. And so my real estate portfolio, over the last 5 or 6 years has really expanded in a very meaningful way, because instead of giving $1 million or more to the IRS, I buy more real estate, or I diversify my stock portfolio, or other things I do. And we've talked about self-directed IRAs and retirement plans, and there's all kinds of things I'm doing there. In fact, this one's important, so I'll share it with you. When you took that designation, just like I have, the real estate professional status, that's now my tax shelter strategy. I don't need to write off all these other things that a lot of people do, which then shows that they make very little, even though they're making good money. When the underwriters of lenders look at you, they say, no, you wrote this all off. You can't qualify for a house now. You can't buy this.
Because that's the biggest problem. Guys, pay attention. You want to get into real estate and you want to be the guy on the loan, you have to have 2 years of 1099 tax returns showing good enough income to qualify for lending. And so that's a hit or a sacrifice or a delay you might have to take, unless you chose to syndicate with somebody else that's going to kind of carry that note.
And there's 2 benefits for that, really. The phantom loss, the depreciation's not real. It gives you all the tax shelter benefits you're looking for to not pay too much in taxes, or maybe any in certain circumstances. But when it comes to qualifying for loans and going to buy things, they add it all back.
Because it doesn't hurt against your lending ability.
So you get the best of both worlds. You still have strong purchasing power and the ability to get loans on a home or property or whatever it is that you want to buy. but also not pay any taxes because they know it's a phantom loss that's not real. And so that's one key element. But the other thing that you touched on earlier is there's a lot of 1099 income earners that are using all these write-offs, so they end up not being able to qualify. Well, when you work with someone like Harris Investment Group, and I'm sure there's other groups doing something similar, we take care of all the financing aspects of it. So what's great about it is as we're making these returns and cash flow distributions, net on your tax return to an underwriter, all they see is profit. They add back the depreciation, you get to use that for taxes, so that helps. But when it comes to qualifying, they don't show any personal liability when they pull your credit. No personal liability. You could be making hundreds of thousands potentially in cash flow from properties. All they're going to see is the income with no debt associated to it. So how do you look now to that lender? You're looking really good, looking really strong. And so some people think, oh, I can't because I'm not making enough. I talked to my lender about it. The underwriter's like, once you make this much, but then what happens when they go talk to their CPA, they're trying to minimize how much you're paying in tax by actually writing off real expenses, which the underwriters won't add back, showing that you made actually in the end not very much, keeping you from qualifying again. So you've got these guys leasing cars, leasing houses, leasing things, never owning it to get all the benefits of ownership.
100%.
Or tax benefits of ownership, which are the most meaningful ways to grow wealth over time.
I love that. So I'm gonna say something real quick that is, I'm gonna go for a second. People have a relationship when it comes to money. One, they don't want to make too much money because they're like, the more money I make, the more I have to pay in taxes. And some people limit themselves from an income perspective because they're like, man, I hate paying the government so much money. And I'm like, well, that's a terrible mindset, right? I'm like, what? Number two is what helped motivate me to sell a lot more accounts and door to door was I knew this real estate world is exciting and there's a lot of opportunity in it. And so people have a relationship of I make enough money to live and it's hard for them to go beyond that. Whatever their living nut is, they're going to make a little more, a little less, depending on how their environment was as they grew up or their conditioning that they've been built around. And so they work enough and they subconsciously sabotage themselves to go much, much more and above and beyond, knowing that this vehicle in sales is a complete open door invitation to go make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. Yet you're subconsciously sabotaging the opportunity because you're complacent with the income and your needs are being met. And so what I did is I tricked my brain. I said, hey, my need is I have to make an extra 150 after taxes to go put into a fourplex. I'm forcing myself to make an extra dollar amount so that I can go do this real estate thing. And it forced me to sell a higher volume. Because if I truly wanted, and I knew need real estate, and I wanted to play in that game, I had to make a lot more money. Therefore, it motivated me every day when I was on the doors. Because most people are like, what's my why? What's my motivation? And they put a cool car and they put a cool house, but they're like, I don't really need that. Like, that's not really that strong of a pull. What was a real strong was I care about the net worth and the wealth that I'm building so that I don't have to work in the future. Like for me, I like to have my fun. I like to travel. I like to go and have my freedom and not have to worry ever about money. And that was my why, not to have a flashy Instagram photo. And still to this day, like, I don't think I've ever even posted my truck. Like, I have a nice truck, but I could care less who knows what truck I drive.
Sure.
Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but I'm like, I care about that stability in my life because I know how important that is to me to have net worth. And so hopefully that helps reframe a little bit the mindset. I don't know if you have something to say on that.
Well, I came from a different background a little bit, in a different space and way of my career than the knocking doors. Although I did sales, but it was different being in financial services. So mine was such that I wasn't making a lot of money. And I found all these amazing opportunities with investments that were essentially more meaningful for the wealthy or high income earners in America.
And you're like,
so for me, it turned the switch where frugality is not the key to wealth building. It's income potential. I have so much limitation. If I'm making $5K a month and I'm just an amazing frugal guy, I may be able to save $2 or $3K of that. That's like totally living bare bones. But what if I earn 10K a month, or 20K a month, or 50K a month, or whatever a month? All of a sudden, the ability to put more money to work, where I too wanted to have financial freedom, financial independence and stability, or the ability to have my wealth and assets pay for the lifestyle, pay for the fun, pay for the things that I enjoy. To do that, I had to make more money. That was something very evident. And when I learned about the tax shelter strategy, we're in a progressive tax system where every marginal dollar you make more could be taxed at a higher rate. And once you're above 460,000 roughly, married filing jointly, you're at 37% federal, used to be 39.6 and it may go back to that. Plus in Utah, 5% state. I mean, you're at 45 cents on the dollar, which is why some people are like, it's not worth it anymore.
Yeah,
like FICA and Medicare tax and then my
employment tax,
federal,
property tax,
state
like
tax.
It's up a lot.
Exactly, but when I learned about the tax shelter strategy, the bonus depreciation loss, do you want to use $100,000 of loss against a 10% tax bracket that I'm in because I'm a low income earner? Or do I want to use it because I'm a high income earner at 42%? Those losses become so much more meaningful when you're earning big money, lots of money. And it's a phantom loss. Again, all the things I was just talking about. So for me, the motivation became, Sam, where it's like, I have to find a way to earn more because I know things that a lot of people don't know. I know how to utilize them. My predicament right now is such that I can't use it meaningfully.
Yeah.
So I have to find ways to earn more income. And so that's when things really evolved for me, that the frugality, the millionaire next door mindset of studying the wealthy, the richest man in Babylon, those principles became meaningful where it's like I have to focus on income because I know how to utilize ways to minimize my tax burden. And then one other thing I just wanted to say that I wanted to mention, when you start utilizing that real estate as a tax shelter vehicle, I was able to start converting all my retirement contributions where I did SEP IRAs or 401ks or traditional IRAs to Roth. And that's typically a taxable event, but you can use depreciation loss to prevent the taxable conversion to be taxable. So I was amassing all these depreciation losses from my real estate purchases, and then I was able to, with all the income I was making, max out my retirement accounts and then convert it all to a Roth IRA so I had another bucket of money that was growing tax-free. It's all about permanent tax reduction long term when you're building wealth. Yeah. So I have real estate that's tax efficient. I have stocks and crypto and all my other assets in a tax-free account like Roth, and I'm not paying any taxes. And the IRS is looking at me and saying he doesn't make any money because I'm sheltering it through all the phantom losses I have. And what's really cool, and this is for years and years down the road, but in retirement, when you go to retire, I could be a billionaire, and I'm making that up, a billionaire, and actually still look like I don't make enough income where I could qualify for Social Security not being taxable. So there's 3 pillars. Because in America, you pay taxes on Social Security going in, and you pay taxes on it coming out when you get it later in life. But ironically, if all your income is real estate or Roth accounts and tax-free, it doesn't show as taxable income. Yeah. So you actually don't have enough taxable income that you get all your Social Security tax-free as well. It's incredible.
That's awesome.
It's all about permanent tax reduction, and real estate is the most amazing way to reduce your tax burden and allow you to get other great tax benefits through other tax-free accounts like Roth IRAs and such. So,
well, let's tell the end cap of where we're at in this story, and then we'll wrap up.
Awesome.
So we sold it in January, the 56plex, and we did what's called a 1031 exchange. So all that money we took out, we actually can roll into a bigger project, which is called a 1031, and not have any taxable income or taxable event. And so you're letting that money just keep compounding. And we partnered in and bought an 80plex in Kansas City. And then we bought actually these 3 office spaces right here I own, which is right behind us, and 3 commercial buildings, and then we're closing on this Avalon, or we're in Dallas, which is a 72?
75, yeah.
75. And so it's diversifying. You have one in Kansas City, one in Utah, and one in Dallas. And yeah, kind of talk us through kind of the project here. So it's like you take that equity or the assets that you made, you then go do it again. And what happens when you go make another, I think we had 100 and something percent return. Let's say you go do that on this money now over the next 2 to 3 years. Then what?
It gets exciting, right? I mean, you're younger than I am, but we're both young and still have a lot of time to compound and grow, right? So yeah, we put 1.5 in, we exited with 4.3 together, and we identified those 3 properties that you just mentioned. A little over $20 million of real estate value between the 3 assets. They're all value add plays. Value add meaning what you talked about, forced appreciation opportunity. So we're buying more of a distressed property that's underperforming that has a higher and better use still. We want to go in and find its highest and best use, implement the property plan to get it there, and then capture all that upside so that we can either stabilize it and keep it for stronger cash flow, or do what we've been doing, sell it years down if we want to because there's enough equity there in a 1031 exchange, there's no taxes, and roll it up into more, depending on what you and I's goals are, right? And so with that, I think between these 3 properties, because there's enough upside opportunity, and I wish we had more time to go into that and why they're so good. One's a Lura property, which allows us to raise rents kind of like we did with White Pines. It could be an 80% increase to the rent rates. Kings Ridge is a unique portfolio of duplexes that have individual tax IDs. So you talked about your fourplexes. You separate them into individual tax IDs, which it was able to get a premium on them. Well, the duplexes, we could do something similar if we wanted to. And it's a different type of buyer that buys a duplex than someone that wants to buy a big portfolio.
Yeah, you get a bulk discount versus, you buy a duplex, there's no bulk discount.
Exactly. And people who are buying it in bulk are looking at it from the income it spits out, the net operating income, with what they're willing to pay for it. Duplexes, you've got primary residence owners there who are looking at it as a home potentially, or a comparable analysis approach of what other things are selling for.
I made an extra $50,000 per unit when I subdivided.
By subdividing it. And here I'm looking at this, we're buying them for about $244,000 a unit. If we were to sell them off as duplexes, we could probably get $300K a unit type of an amount on the retail side by doing that. And it's already set up to do that. And there's upside. We projected $1,000 rent rate per unit. These are big 2-bed, 1-bath, 1,100 square feet with a garage. We just now, this is before we own it, right? We're about to close on it. Got one for $1,150. We are so much higher. I mean, this is awesome. Like, we are sitting really well. And so, I mean, it's just one of those things where 4.3 and in 3 years, 2 or 3 years, however long we want to hold these 3 properties, we're going to be in a great place where we're going to get that big jump in rent rates after we renovate some of these properties, increase the leases, doing what we just did with White Pines. Or who knows, we're going to have a very meaningful amount of equity to continue to diversify the portfolio and grow it from there. And what's so nice is you and I are both in a predicament where we don't need any income from it. They certainly could spit out some nice cash flow if we wanted to utilize it that way. But as of right now, our strategy's more been like, let's just maximize the return and generate the best return. And if that means cash flow, then we'll do that. But right now, putting money back into the property because there's still big upside in it has been a more meaningful way to get a return. We could always change that at any point.
So I think everybody in their mind is like, why do I want to get into real estate? Well, I want mailbox income, right? Well, the problem is like when people look at it, they're like, I make $500 a month on this one. Like I have a threeplex in Murray, and I'm like, oh, cool. I just had to get the furnace replaced just barely, and I'm like, oh, I just ate my whole year of rent. I was like, well, now I made $0 this year on the rent, right? And you do the math, and you're like, okay, how really meaningful? It's like that's a half of a sale of a half of a sale. If I just in my normal life and all the time and energy when they just had a flood with the toilet, and they just had, and you look at the real return on time and money on real just cash flow of 1 or 2 or 3 properties, it's like the goal would be to say, how do I build wealth over the next 10 years and be really patient? Like for me, I'm like, keep your day job. Your day job is what you make money in. Real estate is just on the side building this long-term wealth so that when you're 40 or 50 or whatever, you literally could just have the mailbox income and live a good life. Maybe you're making $20,000 net no matter what coming every month, or 50, whatever that is in your goal. How nice would life be? Because if you're an entrepreneur, you're 1099. I look at my dad and I'm like, there's nobody writing his 401k check every month when he retires. Like, he had to go make his 401k check. Like, you have to plan for things like that. And I think, you know, I coach a lot of business owners, and I look at these business owners that are 50 years old, and they're all like, Sam, help me. And I'm like, well, you're gonna do this for 4 or 5 years, you still have no money in the bank, and then what? Like, you know what I mean? And I'm just like, he's like, well, then I'll sell it. And I'm like, you're gonna have a buyer buy your business as you're like fading out, and you're not even that good. Like, are you really gonna live on what the business, like, you know? And I'm like, freak, that scares me. So I look at life and I'm like, I'm young, I got, my body's working great, I'm willing to go pound the frickin' pavement and do the things required and do the hustle so that this wealth is accumulating. And me, I'm like, I'll be 40. I want to actually be a game show host. I haven't told many people this. I've told this for the last 10 years. I've had the vision.
You'd be great at it.
When I'm 45, I'm going to start a game show and not even care. You know what I mean? Like just, that's the real passion. You really want to know Sam Tiger, it's like, I'm going to make a
the dream,
show.
living the dream.
My dream life is being a game show host. Anyway, so hopefully you guys got some value to this. Guys, like I said, I'm sure, do you have any projects people could get on? Or
we have several projects. We have 6 properties right now under contract.
Oh, cool.
That are opportunities. 8, I guess, technically. I'm not counting the 2 that you and I are doing. But yeah, we're active. We're in Fund 2 right now. And so there's new properties right now that we're working on closing. We've got a couple gas stations, all kinds of tax strategy benefits there. But most of them are value-add multifamily apartment complexes across 4 different states that we're active in.
So if you have some money chilling, guys, hit up Harris Investment Group, Jason Harris. Where can they find you?
Jesse Yates would be the best. He's our head of investor relations. You go to our website. I don't even know Jesse's phone number by memory, but it's Jesse at harrisinvestmentgroup.com.
Yeah, email.
Shoot him an email. We'll absolutely be happy to hop on and talk to your own personal situation. Want to say this, you know, we could have cash flow from our properties if we wanted to. But when you look at the cash flow we're deriving from our properties, our portfolio, us dumping it back into the property through more renovation, I use this example a lot. $1,000 is all it takes to buy a storage unit that a tenant may be willing to pay $50 a month for. 50 times 12 months is $600 a year. 600 divided by 1,000 is a 60% return. However, it's even better than that, Sam, with what you and I do. Because that $1,000, adding $600 a month in rent times 56 tenants, for example, that's like $33,600 more income per year of profit that property is now spitting out, and we're looking to sell it. Well, that income at a 5% cap rate like Salt Lake is, and it's even lower than that really, is like a 20x on 33,000. So that's $670,000 of improvement someone's willing to pay for the property. And so if we did that on all 56 units, right, that's 56 grand, but we just turned it into $670,000. That's so much more than 60% return. So it's even better than that. So my point in this is, why take the cash flow when you and I have enough earned income, active income to meet our lifestyle right now, when we could just take that cash flow, dump it back in the property, and greatly enhance the return overall? At someday, you and I are going to want to hustle and be as active. You're going to be a game host. You're going to be living the dream, right? But for now, it's all about maximizing the return because we don't need the cash flow. But again, at any point, when we're ready, these are great cash flowing assets. It's just right now, it's not justified to take the cash flow from it when there's other opportunities to make a lot more with that money. So.
For sure. So,
Jesse, that's who it was.
Jesse, hit him up. They have some deals now. Thank you guys for listening to this podcast, and I hope that this inspired you to do some more real estate stuff. And like, subscribe, share this with a friend that's interested in real estate. Invite you guys to do something different than what you're doing today to build long-term wealth. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.